Persistent rumors have been circulating that Saudi Arabia is pumping millions of gallons of salty water underground, and doing it deliberately according to a pre-planned scheme. For a long time, it sounded like just another internet legend, but today it is becoming clear. Those conversations had a real foundation. Just recently, this Middle Eastern country lived in a constant state of water shortage. Drought, interruptions, restrictions, all of that was the norm. But then the situation began to change rapidly. And here the main question arises. Why hide water underground when it is so necessary on the surface? We understand perfectly well where Saudi Arabia is located. It is the heart of deserts, one of the driest regions on the planet. And yet, contrary to every law of nature, the country managed to do what seemed impossible, to create its own underground river system where there had never been a single real river. It sounds almost fantasticsky, but it is reality. In Saudi Arabia, there are no rivers, no lakes, no natural sources of fresh water. However, starting in 2021, the state carried out a colossal infrastructure project. 522 dams were built. These dams are not fed by rivers, as in other countries. They collect everything the sky gives, rain and flood flows. After that, the water is purified and enters distribution systems. The main role here is played by so-called wadis, dried-up channels of ancient rivers, which for most of the year are simply empty canyons. But during rare rains, they suddenly turn into raging streams, capable of bringing enormous volumes of water in a short time. If you look at climate maps, it seems almost impossible that a few inches of precipitation could affect the country's water balance in any way. And yet, they can. In certain rainy seasons, so much falls that it is enough to supply entire cities with water. Saudi dams are built not simply for storing water, they save it from destruction. In conditions where the temperature can rise to extreme levels, water left on the surface would evaporate in a matter of hours. That is exactly why collecting and retaining water in reservoirs is critically important. The total capacity of all these dams amounts to a truly incredible figure: 650 billion gallons of water. There are many strategically important hydraulic structures operating in the country. One of the most significant is the Holly Dam, located about 14 kilometers east of Kayad in the Makkah province. Its construction lasted from 2003 to 2009. Today, it is considered the second largest in Saudi Arabia and is capable of holding about 249.86 million cubic meters of water. This dam performs several tasks at once: protection from floods, irrigation of agricultural lands, obezpečení local water supply, recharge of underground water horizons. Only in one district of Makkah, there are 60 dams, which together can hold 232 billion gallons of water. Therefore, despite its reputation as one of the driest countries on earth, Saudi Arabia is still not completely devoid of water. But it is important to understand, dams are only a backup, auxiliary source. The real water artery of the country is not on the surface, but deep underfoot. The main source of water in Saudi Arabia is not rivers and not dams. It is underground aquifers, or, simply put, gigantic underground lakes. Geological studies show, under the country's ground, there are about 26 trillion gallons of water. At first glance, this sounds like inexhaustible wealth, but reality is far more complex. Out of this entire volume, only about 739 billion gallons per year are renewable. That is, can be replenished by rain. This part can be used relatively safely. Everything else is so-called fossil water. This is ancient moisture that accumulated in the ground thousands and even millions of years ago, when the climate of the Arabian Peninsula was completely different. Once these lands were green, rains came regularly and rivers flowed across the territory. Over time, this water slowly seeped into the ground, filling gigantic underground reservoirs, natural aquifers. Today, it is exactly this water that pumps lift to the surface and send into cities, to farms and into homes. But there is one problem. this water does not come back. If you pump it out, it disappears forever, because modern precipitation is not enough to replenish these ancient reserves. Underground waters are a gift of nature, but this is not an infinite resource. It is a fragile line on which the survival of the country depends. Saudi Arabia consumes far more water than it can naturally replenish. The renewable part of underground water does not even cover half of the country's needs. Water is needed not only for drinking and hygiene, it goes to agriculture, industry, cooling, maintenance of parks, car washing, and even to maintaining green lawns in the desert. Demand is enormous, and rains are rare and unpredictable. In one year there may be more of them, in another, almost zero. No stability. Relying on underground water in such conditions is the same as living while spending only savings without income. Sooner or later, the balance becomes zero. If water withdrawal continues at the same pace, underground reservoirs may begin to deplete rapidly. This means Saudi Arabia risks being left with extremely limited sources of water, especially considering the constantly growing population and the increasing demand from cities, industry, and agriculture. The more people, the higher consumption. The more megapolis, the stronger the load on the system. And if fossil underground waters are exhausted, very little alternative will remain. Therefore, in parallel, the country is actively developing wastewater recycling. Across the kingdom, there are 99 treatment plants, and already in 2019 they processed and returned into circulation 1.3 billion gallons of water per day. According to forecasts, this figure will increase by about 4% per year up to 2050. But even such growth will not be able to fully cover future needs. The population continues to grow even faster. Finding themselves between rapidly depleting underground reserves, extremely unstable rains, and growing demand, Saudi engineers had to think outside the box. If nature did not give rivers, they must be created. Nearby is the Red Sea. Also within reach is the Persian Gulf. And then, in the capital, Riyadh, a bold decision was made: pump millions of gallons of seawater under the desert. This was not about creating a natural river, but about something far more technological, a gigantic system of pipes hidden underground. It is an artificial water artery carrying water from the coast deep into the country. You already know that in most regions of Saudi Arabia, on average about 100 millimeters of precipitation fall per year. To maintain modern civilization, this is catastrophically little. That is exactly why the State Water Resources Agency launched the construction of an underground water highway, which became one of the largest engineering systems on the planet. The total length of these pipes is about 8,700 miles. This is more than the length of the Nile, the longest natural river on Earth, whose length is about 4,135 miles. In fact, Saudi Arabia built one of the longest artificial rivers in the history of humanity. Unlike open canals and ordinary pipes, most of this system runs deep below the surface. This is fundamentally important. In the conditions of the desert, where in summer the temperature reaches 50 degrees Celsius, any water on the surface quickly evaporates. Underground, it is protected from heat, solar radiation, and zagraznany. Previously, many water channels of Saudi Arabia ran on the surface. Today, the new system is mostly hidden underground, which allows it to preserve water quality, prevent losses, maintain pressure, ensure a stable flow. An additional advantage is that underground pipes allow water to move efficiently over enormous distances without loss of head. It is important to understand that this underground river is not the only water network in the country. By 2019, the total length of the national water supply system was about 78,200 miles, or 125,888 kilometers. But most of the old pipes are laid either on the surface or shallow underground. This makes them vulnerable to heat, evaporation, and physical damage. The new system coming from the Red Sea is built to completely different standards. It runs deep underground, practically invisible, but at the same time delivers desalinated seawater to cities, industrial zones, and remote regions. This is not just an engineering project. This is a survival system for a country deprived of natural rivers. The creation of this system became one of the most complex engineering projects in the history of the region. To lay the pipelines from the Red Sea and the Persian Gulf into the interior of the country, engineers had to cut through the Hijaz Mountains. Drilling complexes, tunnel boring machines, and controlled explosions were used. Rock formations, dense granite and limestone, created colossal resistance. Some pipes have a diameter of more than 2 meters, and each of them was laid with jeweler-like precision so as not to allow leaks, collapses, or pressure drops. After the mountains, builders faced even harsher conditions. The endless deserts of central Saudi Arabia, where in summer the temperature regularly exceeds 50 degrees Celsius. In such conditions, working during the day is smrtelno dangerous. So many operations were carried out at night or at dawn. But heat was not the only problem. Moving sand dunes, dust storms, and sudden floods constantly threatened construction. Laying pipes underground solved the problem of evaporation and protection from weather, but required deep trenches, grunter reinforcement, and complex engineering solutions. And all of this was done for one goal: to deliver seawater to where it had never been. Throughout the entire story, we are talking about seawater flowing underground through pipes. But a logical question sounds like this: what benefit is salty water for millions of people? The answer is desalination. Desalination is a technological process in which salt and impurities are removed from seawater, turning it into polnocenny fresh water suitable for drinking, household needs, and industry. For countries surrounded by seas but deprived of rivers, this is effectively the only path to water security. In the case of Saudi Arabia, it is exactly this technology that allows turning the water of the Red Sea and the Persian Gulf into a vital resource. However, desalination is far from an ideal solution. For the ability to drink seawater, you have to pay a high price. First, it is an energy-intensive process. In order to remove salt and impurities, enormous volumes of electricity are required, which most often are produced from non-renewable sources. Second, it is expensive. The cost of desalinated water can be 3 to 10 times higher than water from traditional sources. But there is a third factor: ecology. In the process of desalination, a byproduct is formed: brine, that is, concentrated salty water. If it is disposed of incorrectly, it can cause serious harm to marine flora and fauna. Nevertheless, despite all these disadvantages, Saudi Arabia made a stafka precisely on desalination and turned it into its main tool of survival. In the 1980s, desalination infrastructure in the country was minimal, but then Saudi Arabia began to invest colossal funds in this sphere. By 2011, about 30 desalination plants were operating along the coast. By 2023, there were 33, and already in 2024, 43 operating complexes. This is not just growth. This is a strategic expansion of water technologies. In addition to the national program, separate regions launch their own projects. Cities like Riyadh and Neom actively integrate green infrastructure into their development. By 2024, hundreds of millions of trees had already been planted in the country, and this process continues. Although reaching the goal of 10 billion will take time, a significant part of vulnerable desert zones is already under protection or participating in pilot projects. The greening program is not just an ecological project. It is a symbol of a deep transformation of Saudi Arabia. A country that for centuries has been associated with sand and drought is creating a new future based on water, technologies, and sustainability. Write your opinion in the comments below.